Welcome to the Metal Prognosis. My name is Lee, and on today's video we're going to be looking at 3 different effects units. And what I thought would be cool is, let's do it as a blind test. So let's eliminate any visual aspects and any bias that we might have on either those exact units or that brand, or even what they look like or anything, and just use our ears. And what I'm keen to really see is, when you're listening to them, what stands out between each one. Is there going to be one that you might like the bottom dynamics more, or the clarity in another one, or the saturation in another one, or whatever the case might be, whatever makes you highlight it either towards it or maybe even against it, I'm not sure. So I've got a Shadows of Bass song, and I'm going to perform it from start to finish, and every 4 bars I'm just going to switch out which effects pedal, unit, I'll be using, and I'll label them like A, B and C, and the very tail end I'll do a reveal. So then you can see which one's what. Now, the 3 units that I'm using are pretty cool units. We have the NUX MG30. Another one that we'll be using in this video is the Moa GE200. And the last one that's going to be involved in this video is the Harley Benton DNA effects pedal. Now, the cool thing about all these is we can load up our own third-party IRs, and that's exactly what I've done. So I've got the same IR running through every single one of them, and I've tried to match them, not so much to be identical to each other, but as close as I possibly could to what that unit is trying to represent. So the same type of amp, the same type of settings, and that. So I haven't tried to equal them to try. This isn't a let's fool you type of video, not at all. It's let's try to assess it as each individual unit without knowing what we're assessing first. And as I said at the start of this, we'll try with our ears and not with our eyes. So I think I've done enough stuttering during this intro. Let me do the jam and go through it, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about it on the other side. So cue the little cartoon, and then let's do the big jam. time for some final thoughts on this blind shootout with these 3 different effects units. So as you can see behind me, there's a lot of takes I had to capture to get this all happening and sounding the way it did. So if there are a few cuts in this last bit, that's because my stuttering is a little bit too much, and I might want to just cut out a couple of those dead air space and all that, so you're not just sitting there waiting for me to get my words out. Firstly, the IR that I used for all 3 of these, I went on the ARRIS Effects website. So they're best known, I believe, for their Savage drive pedal that I've got here. And they're giving away a few free IRs. So I hopped on their website and grabbed, I think they've got 7 on there, which is really cool. No, they've got 7, they've got a bucket load. They had 3 folders worth. But in the last folder I only had 7, but there's a heap more. So I used the same one across all 3. And how I approached this, first I started off with the Harley Benton. That was the first one that we saw, so this was A. And I decided to go with what they emulated to be the, what was it? The 5150 amp to run through, because I wanted something high gain. I wanted something that gave enough grunt and all that to really, well, that's kind of the tone that I'm really into when it comes to my drop C tuning. So that's what I tried to go for. And the fascinating thing was, it was no problem really putting that together, giving it a quick EQ and integrating it in here was no problem at all. Did it with the mower as well. That was no problem. So that had a 5150 in there as well. Pretty smooth, pretty straightforward. I used gates on all of them, their own in-house gates, and that worked out an absolute charm, which made editing pretty much not even needed. They gated that cleanly, and because I had all these going directly into my mixing console there, with no mics or anything, no editing was really needed for it at all. It kept enough noise, how could I really say it, sorry? There was no unwanted noise while I wasn't playing, so I didn't need to edit anything out or muck around. But the interesting thing I found was when I got to the Nuix, this didn't have a 5150 in there. And I'd already recorded all the takes for these 2. So I recorded all the yellow and purple on there. And I was like, I'm not going back and figuring out which one they all sync up with. Because hindsightly was like, yeah, you should have, but I didn't. So what I decided to go with this one was they've got a dual rectifier. And I thought that will do. That's a nice high gain amp to try use anyway. And the main thing is the cab. The cab would make the biggest impact anyway. So yeah, you could argue to say all the settings aren't the same. It's not a good comparison, but the fact that I didn't tell you what they were to start with, and we're only going by ears, and it's only a rough kind of back-to-back to see the difference between them. Yeah, I think it worked out really well. It was interesting to see which one gave it more saturation, which one didn't, which ones felt a little bit drier, which ones had a lot more richer bottom end, especially when it came to the palm mutes that I was doing in the tune. Yeah, it was really interesting. And definitely keen for your thoughts. What did you feel? Were there any highlights that you thought was like, wow, I really like that, and I'm keen to know which one that is because that sounds really cool. Yeah, so definitely keen for that. For any bass players out there, I am going to confess this because there's normally at least a couple of bass players that will comment or get in contact with me and say, why are you using a pick? I tried 3 attempts to not use a pick doing the bass take for this, and I couldn't get through a whole take in a single take without using a pick. So after the 3rd failure, I just went, you know what? I was going to use a pick because after each take, my hand got more and more sore and more tired. So I went, you know, the show must go on, and when you're performing, you've got to do what you've got to do to get through the show. And so I just grabbed a pick and did it that way. So apologies, I did give it a shot to do it without a pick, but yeah, after the 3rd time, it was, yeah, a little bit demotivating, and yeah, I didn't want to try do it again when, yeah, it was getting pretty strained, my hand. So that is why I chose to use a pick. But it still worked, and hopefully the main thing was the guitar effects units though, so let's focus in and home on that, please. And that's another video done. So thank you very much for joining me in this video. It's another cool blind test, lots of fun. I do enjoy these. They're a bit of a bugger to edit and put together, and as you can see, it's a lot of A lot of work, but the results are pretty cool. So yeah, I don't mind doing them. Thank you very much for joining me in this. I thoroughly look forward to hearing from you about this video and in future videos. And until the next time we get to chat, please stay safe.